Recollections whirling about in Carly Simon's head as she stands at her Martha's Vineyard getaway, feeling the wind tug at her scarf. The betrayal, artistic contempt, and unhealed wounds that lurk beneath her glitzy career and emotional melodies. She mentions them infrequently. Still, the fury lurks, hums under the melody, and hides in the spaces between the lyrics. These six artists made Carly Simon feel things, and she eventually came to secretly hate them. Linda Ronstadt was hit hard by the initial betrayal. They frequently performed in groups in the late 1970s and were known for their emotionally raw, vocally driven, and tremendously successful music. Even behind-the-scenes information, grins, and stages were exchanged for a time. The poise, strength, and verbal agility with which Linda could command any room was something that Carly truly appreciated. When a mutual producer, one that Carly had faith in, unexpectedly gave Linda a dream project, their admiration quickly turned to sadness. There was more at stake than simply a lost chance. A devastating blow. All of Carly's energy and passion had gone into getting ready for that project. When Linda took it without so much as a phone call, it seemed more like a personal than a professional betrayal. Never once did Carly confront her. She merely strode away, unhurried, but burdened by a pain that would last for years. The treachery was in the subsequent quiet, not the music itself. Linda skipped the call. Carly was always reminded. On rare occasions, they would cross paths, exchanging faraway waves and tight smiles. A chill had dissipated. Years later, Carly halted as a journalist inquired about their friendship. Subtly shifted the conversation's focus. The reason being that certain wounds never fully heal. They simply master the art of disguising themselves as professionals. Now we have Joni Mitchell, the embodiment of cool calculatedness. Two symbols of feminine creativity to the globe. I see rivalry, however, concealed under pretenses of mutual regard. The way Joni could weave beauty into anguish and order into disorder was something that Carly used to admire in Joni's poetic genius. When they shared a studio in the mid-70s, though, their adulation transformed into subtle disappointment. With her arms crossed, Joni showed there coldly and started making comments almost immediately. In her accusation that Carly was singing, she characterized her voice as lovely but lacking in rawness, like she had some unspoken fear of losing love. This hit Carly like a ton of bricks since she is extremely sensitive and uses her work as a means of connecting with people. No chord could drown out the words. Despite her admiration, Joni treated her like a groveling student. Their dynamic was never the same. They maintained their distance at industry events, smiling but never really connecting eye to eye. The tension was electric, unsaid, and unsolved. There was no explosion or major break. A strong bond, a lyrical sisterhood, was ruined by the icy lack of communication. You learn to root for some ladies and avoid others, as Carly put it. No one needed her to mention Joni's name. They were all aware. Those who were close to her claimed they could hear Joni's shadow dance in each note as she sang about women who used their intelligence as a weapon. Warren Beatty, the most notorious resentment, is where it all starts. The topic of that song, indeed. Their romance was intense and rapid. Spite, ardor, trickery. Although he was ruthlessly self-absorbed, Warren exuded an irresistible magnetic pull. Trapped by his magnetic presence, Carly fell deeply. Convinced that she had finally met someone who appreciated her for who she was, not how she appeared to the outside world. It seemed genuine for an instant. Laughter resonating in hotel rooms, whispered dreams, romantic dinners. However, it was brief. Like a never-ending storm, the lies came quickly. Various women. Lie detectors. Facts that vanish. Sadness retreat. Carly clung to the hope that she could be sufficient. But when she realized the deception was real, anger and icy coldness replaced her grief. To maintain her honor and immortalize her suffering, she wrote, "You're so vain," in an effort to make him feel bad about himself. It was an expression of discontent, a musical wound. He knows it's about him, she says, even after all these years. Neither the anguish nor the bitterness ever really subsided. Simply put, certain betrayals never go away. They simply discover fresh verses to torment. Then along came Bob Dylan, the critic turned poet. They worked together for a short time. Carly felt a mix of excitement and hope. Ever since she was a little girl, she had admired Bob Dylan's voice. With an open mind and a desire to make something truly remarkable, she arrived at the session with much enthusiasm. Dylan, meanwhile, was tardy, gave a dismissive hello, and mumbled his way through practices as if he were too busy to pay attention. He didn't pay her any attention, interrupted her mid-sentence, and completely disregarded her input. There was more to it than that. The tone was degrading. He didn't regard her as an equal, but as an opening act. Nobody cared about Carly, even though she had built her profession on being honest about her emotions. Tears welling up beneath her sunglasses, she abruptly exited the session, her self-esteem battered. The rejection wasn't the only thing. The apathy was the painful part. He refrained from provoking an argument. He remained calm. Without responding, he continued to disregard. She just said, "We write different kinds of truths," when questioned about Dylan years later. Her loved ones, however, were aware. Because of how he made her feel unimportant, she will never forgive him. A turning point occurred during that one session, when meaningless devotion gave way to something more focused. Disillusionment mixed with disappointment. And the pain of knowing that your heroes don't always fall gracefully. While they do this, they push you away. Next up, we have David Lee Roth, the 80s scene's wild card. Their encounter at a charity event went from ridiculous to ugly, despite how ridiculous it seems on paper. Carly Simon and the ostentatious vocalist of Van Halen. Carly wasn't prepared for the spectacle that ensued from what was supposed to be a night of togetherness and joy. In front of an actual audience, Roth made snide comments about Carly, her music, her age, and her appearance. While Carly stood motionless, her composure serving as her sole defense, he strutted across the platform, chuckling at his own digs. The cameras were filming, so she chuckled pleasantly, but deep down, she was inconsolable. She broke down in tears behind the scenes. Her pride shattered, her cosmetics caked on. It was degrading as well as offensive. It was a moment that demonstrated how women in music might be reduced to punchlines by bigger, brasher men. She subsequently described it as public shaming disguised as rock and roll. It brought up hurt feelings she had believed had healed, wounds from being unconsidered in boardrooms, interviews where her abilities were disregarded, and stages where she was more seen than hurt. No, it wasn't the insult that stung the most. It was the cheers, the clapping, and the absence of intervention. Carly backed out of multiple public appearances in the days that followed. Being confident when performing does not equate to being risk-free, she noted in her notebook that evening. Carly would not go to any gathering where Roth would be present after that night. No ill will was intended. It delineated a limit. Because quiet fury can be just as powerful. It's peaceful. It's a whispered promise to never again feel insignificant in someone else's circus, a locked door. James Taylor, the one who hurt the most, was last but not least. They were inseparable, joined forces in marriage, in sorrow, and in song. Her crystalline fragility met his gentle, smoky tones, and their voices became entwined like needles in a tapestry. They collaborated on ballads that seemed like global love letters. Amidst the allure, disorder lurked. Carly was burdened by James' battles with addiction, popularity, and faithfulness. As he spiraled downward, her beloved vanished emotionally and reappeared as a shell of his former self. She beheld it all. On some evenings, he would not return home. On other days, he would choose to remain silent than speak. And on still other occasions, his music would speak louder than words could. It was longer than most people would stand by him, because she was devoted to her husband and hoped he would come back to her. Yet, a fragment of her started to disappear with every setback, betrayal, and broken vow. This powerful singer began to experience both the highs and lows of heartbreak simultaneously. Their split was gradual rather than abrupt, and it was harsh yet silent. Instead of yelling battles or tabloid scandals, there was only physical separation, emotional anguish, and the gradual end to closeness. His presence remains palpable whenever her music delves into themes of loss and grief. It's in the lyrics that refrain from specifically mentioning him and in the quiver of her voice. Since her songs serve as a constant reminder of him, she has no need to publicly criticize him. Their narratives are distinct. Through the transformation of love into grief, wrath, and, ultimately, specters, someone who has passed on but whose spirit remains in the audience, silently cheering for the survivor. Although she sung about being vulnerable, Carly Simon had to deal with betrayal in real life. Not only did these musicians impact her profession, but they also shaped her soul. Although their names may have fallen out of the news, they continue to exist in her songs through analogies, shadows, and unresolved chords. Pain is screamed by some artists. Hers was whispered by Carly. As a result of my strength, not my weakness. Instead of vengeance, her art was a means of survival. Even though she was missing parts, with each tune she put herself back together again. Even though she doesn't often mention them by name, you can hear their influence in her verses, the pauses between lines, and the descending melodies that lead up to the chorus. The aches she never tries to hide, and the crescendos that never fully soar are audible signs of it. Often the lyrics seem to freeze on specific words, as if singing them were still painful. Carly Simon conveys her anger through harmony, falsetto, and sadness rather than shouting it. You can still hear it in every soft piano note, in every unresolved harmony. Her voice became a platform where sorrow could spread its wings and resentment could dance shamelessly. The pauses between lines convey more meaning than the words themselves.